Helena awakens in darkness, not quite a person and not quite dead. When light finally finds her, it comes as a blade, questions, experimenters, and a world that has been remade by grief and power. This is a book about memory and what people will do to keep or control what they love. Over the next half hour, I'll take you through every chapter of Alchemised, keeping the order and the heart of SenLinYu's story while knitting the events into a single, cinematic narrative. Prologue. Helena remembers the dark, stasis, surges of pain, and a promise to stay ready. Put into a preservation tank after the fall of the Resistance, she survived in a way no one expected. Alone in the dark, she rehearses memory as a life raft, counting jolts of electricity and the places she will return to when if she wakes. The first breath of light tears Helena back into the world. She is dragged from the suffocating tank that had preserved her for so long, her body stiff and her mind disoriented. She finds herself in the heart of the Alchemy Institute's central, where shadows of power and cruelty converge. Shackles bite into her wrists, cold metal chains that remind her how precarious her survival has become. She is interrogated by officials who treat her less like a human being and more like an anomaly. Her records do not match, her file seems altered or incomplete, and her very existence is questioned. Medical hands prod at her as vivimancers mutter about transmutations in her brain, about impossible rerouting of pathways that no ordinary human could have endured. Moruf, the High Necromancer, studies her with a mixture of fascination and menace, his gaze promising that her suffering will not be wasted. He declares her an object of personal interest, a puzzle he will unearth piece by piece. Helena's confinement is interrupted by brief moments of human contact. She meets Grace, an orderly within the Institute, who shows her small mercies in a place otherwise built on cruelty. Through Grace, Helena learns the world she once knew has been remade under the Undying's grip. Executions are commonplace. Necrothralls march as reminders of power, and the outpost is whispered of as a place where the living are consumed as fuel for experiments. The Resistance, once a flicker of hope, has been extinguished. Names of the dead and the lost echo through the sterile walls. Luke, Lila, the eternal flame, each name a wound to Helena's memory. Fear is everywhere, yet so is kindness, fragile and fleeting, in the way Grace tends to her despite the danger. Helena is subjected to formal examinations where vivimancers and necromancers argue over her altered mind. The probing stirs fragments of memory, violent flashes of the past that refuse to remain buried. She sees Luke's face, burning fires and brutal executions. Shizio and Stroud, two specialists, debate the possibility that animancy, the transfer of mind and soul, has been used on Helena. They whisper that the eternal flame may have possessed forbidden methods for entering and altering the human mind. Morov commands a deeper probe, drawn by the temptation of power hidden in Helena's fractured consciousness. Sedation becomes her prison. The doctors drug her, keeping her docile while they circle around theories of vivimancy and the unnatural work done within her brain. Helena clings to the only anchors she has, flickering memories of Luke, the camaraderie of the holdfasts, and the warmth of the hospital where she once healed the broken. Yet outside her cell, the grandeur of the Institute feels hollow, transformed into a palace of cruelty where even knowledge bends to the Undying's will. Day by day, a grim routine takes hold. Helena is paraded before examiners, her body subjected to tests meant to expose her past. They demand to know about Etras, about the holdfast patronage, about her service as a healer. She refuses to betray her memories. Alone in her cell, she replays how she survived the tank, asking herself why she was spared. Was it her value to the Resistance, or was she deliberately left alive because she was dangerous? Her existence is a mystery she herself cannot solve. A stolen scrap of newsprint becomes her first clue. In its faded ink, Helena sees evidence of missing months in her memory. Time itself has been taken from her. A date here, a name there, they do not match what she recalls. Among the pages, she sees the face of Cain Farron, a man whose presence will become central to her future. The realization crashes down on her. She is not simply a victim of imprisonment, but of deliberate erasure. The interrogations grow darker. Morro's appetite for knowledge frightens even the Institute's own. He presses Helena with invasive procedures that rip through her mind and force fragments of memory to the surface. She recalls Luke again, and the promise of the eternal flame, the bond of family forged in fire and loss. But Moroff is relentless. He does not want her as a person, he wants what she knows, and what she might reveal about the flame. A new idea circulates among her captors, animancy. The possibility of transferring souls, of penetrating minds, of seizing knowledge buried in consciousness. The arguments are cold and clinical, but Helena can feel the hunger behind them. Bennett's name is mentioned in hushed tones. She endures examinations that strip her dignity away, learning to recognize which of the staff are ambitious predators and which are reluctant pawns. Memories cut through her like blades. The last battle returns to her mind in broken fragments. Fire consuming the city, cages filled with the dying, and the sight of Luke's execution. She remembers being displayed, humiliated, and then plunged into stasis while still conscious. Rage takes root in her, a living force that keeps her from surrendering entirely to despair. The Institute's obsession with her memories deepens. For each glimpse she provides might hold the key to power. The politics of the living creep into central. Those who once served the holdfasts are dragged out, mocked and punished, their noble history twisted into a weapon. Helena begins to see cracks in the Institute's unity, jealousies, ambition, and whispered betrayals. She begins to understand that her survival was no accident. Someone tampered with her records, someone with reason to bury her in obscurity. The thought gnaws at her even more than the chains. Stroud and Shizio whisper about her origins. Was Helena altered by someone inside the eternal flame itself? Memories of Ellen Boyle, a healer with unorthodox methods, flicker through Helena's fractured mind. Could Boyle have tampered with her, left her altered to protect secrets? The idea terrifies her, for it would mean even those she trusted most saw her as a vessel to be used. Yet she steels herself. Whatever was done, she will endure. Lucian Holdfast's legacy becomes a subject of study. Helena is forced to recount what she knows of the Holdfasts, their noble ideals and their ruthlessness. In remembering, she also recalls the quieter days in the hospital, the mercy in small acts, and the fragile rhythm of a life constantly threatened by war. The Holdfast's myths unravel, exposing both the fire of resistance and the cruelty of rule. Her body is mapped like territory. Old breaks, lingering nerve damage, each wound is catalogued. Technicians fit her with new restraints, cuffs that nullify her resonance entirely. The device isolates her from the energy within, cutting her off from any chance of harnessing what lingers in her altered mind. The Institute treats her like a mind to be stripped, slowly, piece by piece. Within the Institute's walls, ambitions and cruelty surface. Mandel's jealousy is revealed as the reason Helena was cast aside into stasis in the first place. Her hatred left Helena to rot in darkness, a decision made casually and with spite. The politics of the undying are ruthless. Mistakes are hidden, rivals sabotaged, and lives discarded without thought. Moroff delivers punishment in his theatrical way. Mandel is made into an example, turned into an object of suffering so that all will see what disloyalty brings. Helena watches, horrified but strangely clear-eyed, as cruelty is transformed into spectacle. The rituals of the undying are revealed as performances meant to crush spirit and instill fear. Helena is moved into new chambers in the tower, deeper into the heart of experimentation. Here, she hears talk of soul Mithridatism, a process of gradual exposure that could allow animancy to take root without killing the subject. Moroff is determined to weaponize whatever the eternal flame discovered, and Helena realizes that her mind is the battlefield on which this knowledge will be fought. Specialists are gathered. Plans are drafted. The Vivimancers and Necromancers argue over techniques, over whose knowledge will prevail. The absence of Bennett is keenly felt, and whispers spread that even higher authorities may be drawn into the pursuit of animancy. Helena feels herself being transformed from prisoner into prize, a living vessel of possibility. A fever racks her body after another experiment. Memories erupt like shattered glass, flames devouring buildings, her hands sewing broken bodies back together, Luke's image flickering as if he might still be alive in her mind. The Vivimancers lean close, coaxing her, desperate to turn these visions into something they can use. For Helena, they are agony, and yet a reminder of who she was. Word spreads within the institute. Helena learns that the Eternal Flame's techniques were more advanced than anyone had believed. Her own work as a healer, once dismissed as ordinary, is recast as part of something greater and more dangerous. Whoever tampered with her mind did so with sophistication that unsettles even her captors. Fragments of her past rise to the surface, the streets of Etras, the journey to Palladia, the grandeur and contradictions of the holdfasts. She begins to stitch together an identity she thought lost. She is not only a healer. She is someone shaped by both sides of the war, someone who once belonged to the Institute but also to Luke and to the Resistance. Her curiosity becomes resistance. Helena searches for patterns, for clues hidden in the archives and in stray scraps of information. She reconstructs events through dates and cross-references, slowly realizing how much has been taken from her. Entire stretches of time have been erased. She is not simply a prisoner of the present. She is missing pieces of herself. The story shifts to years earlier. The Solis Splendor Festival and the Bayard family cast light on Palladia before the fall. Helena recalls the Bayards, their history and their influence, and how their legacy intersected with the Eternal Flame. These memories ground her, giving her human reasons for fighting, friendships, fleeting joys, the ordinary texture of life. Back in the hospital, Helena works with relentless determination. Her fingers save lives in the chaos of war, even when the work breaks her body and spirit. She refuses to surrender, tending wounds in the shadow of annihilation. Her care becomes a quiet act of rebellion, proof that humanity can survive cruelty. The Resistance, for all its noble ideals, is far from perfect. Helena witnesses the conflicts within, the disputes over tactics, the bitterness that grows as losses mount. Trust is fragile and loyalty strain. She learns that idealism does not always withstand the weight of war. People fail each other, and yet they keep fighting. Desperation drives the Resistance to riskier actions. Helena becomes involved in smuggling food and supplies from the outpost, operations that blur the line between survival and crime. She learns to navigate the murky world of compromises, where every choice carries a cost. It is a grim education in the realities of resistance. The hospital braces for a new offensive. Plans are made for a strike, and Helena prepares her wards for the flood of casualties to come. Her role is no longer just as a healer but as a bearer of hope. She tends the wounded, comforts the fearful, and holds the eternal flame alive in those who still dare to fight. Hope is fragile, but it flickers stubbornly, refusing to die. The Resistance prepares for a bold strike to retake the ports. Helena tends to the wounded as plans are whispered in darkened rooms. She watches commanders gamble with lives for the sake of symbolic victory. When the assault begins, chaos floods the wards. Men and women return broken, and Helena's hands ache as she struggles to keep them alive. For a brief moment, it feels like the city might be wrested back, but every triumph carries the taste of blood. The retaking unleashes horrors. The Institute's laboratories are breached, and the Resistance finds victims twisted into grotesque experiments. Liberation turns to grief as survivors stumble in, bodies altered beyond recognition. The Resistance cheers its progress, but Helena's hospital becomes a place of mourning. Each life she saves is a reminder of the cruelty they fight. Reports of chimeras and unnatural transmutations reach Helena. She confronts the moral abyss of experiments that turned people into weapons. Ilva questions her, demanding whether resources should be spent saving those already beyond recognition. Helena realizes medicine is no longer just healing wounds but deciding who deserves to live. Victory at the ports feels hollow. Institutions barely function, supplies run thin, and the Resistance is stretched to breaking. Rumors spread that Morroth is regrouping. The city may be theirs for the moment, but Helena knows necromancy's grip is far from broken. In abandoned labs, Helena and others uncover traces of animancy research. The possibility of entering minds terrifies her. What once seemed impossible is now revealed as an ethical nightmare. She realizes that if such knowledge spreads, nothing will remain sacred. The Resistance secures more laboratories, but the discoveries are grim: nullium, corrupted bodies, and endless human experiments. The hospital strains under the burden. Helena begins to see that each military win only brings new floods of suffering. Friendships deepen under pressure. Nights spent in triage rooms and whispered conversations forge bonds Helena never expected. Yet these same bonds bring new grief as each loss becomes more personal. The faces of the wounded and dead refuse to leave her. A betrayal surfaces. Someone within the resistance has sold information. Suspicion spreads like fire. Helena, who once believed trust was unbreakable, now feels paranoia seeping into every conversation. The search for the traitor consumes them. Helena's healing and intuition help uncover fragments of truth, but trust remains fragile. Her loyalty to Luke's memory and to the living keeps her steady even as suspicion poisons the air. Experiments in necrothralls resurface, this time closer to home. Helena sees victims whose souls have been enslaved. Healing them is almost impossible. She struggles with the unbearable question, can someone whose will has been stolen ever be whole again? Morrow's presence lingers like smoke. Whispers of his influence unsettle the resistance. Helena feels the tide turning again, the enemy's cruelty evolving, adapting, preparing for its return. A rescue mission pulls Helena into danger. They recover documents and survivors, evidence of the Undying's reach. The operation succeeds, but the cost is high. Each secret revealed is another reminder of how deep the corruption runs. The raid draws brutal reprisals. Helena tends to the wounded, knowing their suffering comes from choices she supported. Knowledge is dangerous, and carrying it feels like holding fire. Tensions rise between commanders and medics. Plans treat people like expendable pawns, and Helena resists, trying to hold on to compassion. She sees how war corrodes even those fighting for freedom. Cain Farron's presence grows heavier. His history begins to surface, filled with betrayals and scars. Helena's feelings toward him are tangled with fear, contempt, and reluctant dependence. He embodies both danger and strength. The resistance attempts to rebuild. Schools reopen, markets return, and hospitals patch broken lives together. Yet remnants of vivimancy and necromancy linger in the shadows. Helena realizes that survival is only the first step. Rebuilding requires deeper courage. New weapons appear, nullium devices that poison resonance itself. Patients flood the hospital with symptoms she barely understands. Helena becomes a reluctant expert, improvising treatments to keep them alive. Exhaustion and despair weigh heavily. Helena faces wounds she cannot heal and memories she cannot retrieve. She wonders if rebuilding a world scarred so deeply is even possible. But hope lives in ordinary acts. Nurses, scavengers, and families take risks to rebuild their streets. Helena draws strength from them, realizing resistance is not just in battle but in persistence. An ambush shakes the fragile peace. Survivors reveal divided loyalties, some turned by trauma into tools of their oppressors. Helena treats them anyway, seeing not traitors but victims of cruelty. Cain's leadership is questioned. His past decisions haunt him, and Helena must decide whether to oppose him or lend her voice to his cause. Trust feels dangerous, yet abandoning him may mean collapse. Clues about Ellen Boyle emerge. Helena learns the Eternal Flame's research may have been guided by a healer. What was once thought resistance myth is revealed as dangerous truth. The resistance fractures over scarce resources. Arguments over food, weapons, and healing grow bitter. Helena steps in, trying to balance compassion with the hard realities of survival. An infiltration through the Flood Cathedral pushes Helena and her comrades to their limits. Flooded corridors, crumbling stone, and sheer endurance mark the journey. Rescue is less about glory than sheer survival. They uncover hidden caches and secret labs, proof of the Undying's vast operations. Helena is horrified by the industrial scale of cruelty. It deepens her resolve, even as the weight of it nearly breaks her. Helena's healing is tested on the battlefield itself. She calms the terrified, treats wounds in moments of chaos, and proves that compassion can be as vital as weapons. She grows into a leader who understands that survival is not only about strategy, but about saving the will to live. In a rare pause from fighting, Helena experiences the fragile comfort of domestic life. Letters are exchanged, meals are shared, and laughter returns for brief moments. These small gestures remind everyone of what they are fighting for. They are not just resisting an enemy, but striving for the possibility of ordinary lives where families can sit together without fear. The Undying use horror as a weapon, staging spectacles called reliquaries. Bodies are transformed and displayed to send messages of domination. Helena witnesses these rituals and feels the deliberate cruelty behind them. She realizes that such performances are designed not only to terrify, but to crush the very idea of resistance by making survival seem impossible. The resistance struggles to keep the ports open. Supplies are shipped in, medicines are smuggled, and food is distributed to starving families. Helena's hospital becomes a central point where survival balances on a knife's edge. Each shipment is a victory, each shortage a reminder that logistics are as vital as weapons in this war. The enemy unleashes nullium on a devastating scale. Victims arrive with resonance stripped from their bodies, leaving them hollowed and weakened. Helena faces a challenge unlike any before. The usual methods fail, and she must invent new ways to treat injuries that cannot be seen. It forces her to confront the terrifying fragility of life when even energy itself can be poisoned. Recovery is slow and uneven. Helena helps design experimental treatments to cleanse nullium from the body. She trains others in new techniques, creating a generation of healers who can carry the work forward. Healing becomes not just a duty but an act of resistance, a way to reclaim dignity from devastation. Attention turns to the families who have endured the brunt of the war. Helena sees the grief of the orphaned, the anguish of the maimed, and the pain of those forced to live with altered kin. These stories become her fuel, proof that survival is not abstract but deeply personal. Each face represents a reason to keep fighting. An espionage network is uncovered. Secrets emerge about the Undying's vast reservoirs of lemmithium and nullium. Helena realizes how deeply commodified life has become, with bodies and limbs traded for safety. The war is not just about power but about turning people into resources. Helena confronts the painful possibility that the eternal flame once used animancy not for cruelty, but as an act of love. Perhaps some minds were altered to save or protect others. The moral lines blur, and she questions whether sacrifice can ever be justified if consent is impossible. Small victories emerge. A bakery reopens. Children laugh in the streets, and life begins to reclaim the city inch by inch. For every monstrous discovery in the ruins, Helena finds moments of beauty. These fragile successes keep despair at bay. Her bond with Cain fair and deepens into a complex mix of trust and fear. They find themselves relying on one another, yet doubt always lingers. Their shared burdens draw them closer, even as the risk of betrayal makes intimacy dangerous. A fresh betrayal cuts into the resistance. A close ally reveals divided loyalties, and Helena must weigh retribution against the potential harm to innocence. Justice and vengeance blur, and every choice risks creating new wounds. A mission to recover vital research ends in failure. The team suffers losses, and false leads waste their limited time. The Undying prove adaptable and resilient, their networks deeper than anyone imagined. The defeat weighs heavily on morale. The resistance shifts its strategy. Instead of focusing only on military strikes, they plan to reveal the Undying's crimes to the public. Helena becomes a reluctant voice of truth, knowing that exposure may finally force accountability. Helena's mind begins to stabilize. The barriers placed within her brain are studied and partially dismantled. For the first time, she trusts her own memories. Recovery no longer feels distant. It becomes something she can hold. Cain's duplicity is exposed but reframed. His secrets, though dangerous, were sometimes shields to protect others. Helena learns that deception is not always born of cruelty. Slowly, precariously, trust is rebuilt between them. A confrontation with Morrowa's loyalists brings a narrow escape. In its aftermath, Helena discovers relics of lemmithium that blur the line between weapon and cure. Technology and ritual mix, offering both destruction and salvation. Helena's leadership is tested in a desperate defense. She chooses who lives and who falls, saving many but sacrificing others. The weight of her decisions is immense, each life a reminder of the impossible balance she must hold. The Underhive reveals its complicated politics. Some collaborators prove pragmatic rather than evil, while some supposed allies reveal selfish motives. Helena learns that survival forces compromise, and alliances are rarely clean. Ellen Boyle's methods are finally unveiled. The eternal flame distributed memories across multiple minds, a safeguard against complete loss. Helena realizes she may carry fragments of others within her, and that she is part of a larger design. The revelations divide the resistance. Some see animancy as salvation, others as monstrous. Helena stands at the crossroads, torn between restoring stolen truths and preventing their misuse. A raid into Central uncovers documents linking the Institute's work to the Holdfast's quest for immortality. The stakes shift from military survival to the very soul of Palladia. Helena sees how personal ambition warped into mass cruelty. Violence finds Helena even in supposed safety. Atreus, Cain's father, and his loyalists strike. Her home becomes a battlefield, and she saves a life thought lost through quick action. The price is heavy, another reminder that safety is fleeting. The resistance accepts a grim truth: victory is meaningless without accountability. Plans move toward rebuilding institutions and creating justice that can endure beyond the war. Helena steps into a role as healer and leader both. Final confrontations fracture the Undying's grip. Rituals are disrupted, reliquaries seized, and Morrow's power wanes. Helena uses knowledge of animancy not to dominate but to heal, proving it can serve restoration. Peace is fragile, but it arrives in pieces. Survivors reclaim their streets. Rituals of mourning replace spectacles of cruelty, and memory itself becomes sacred. Helena helps shape ceremonies that honor the dead without exploiting them. In the last movement, Helena guides survivors toward a future built on shared oversight of resonance and healing. She finds reconciliation in fragments, debts repaid, and names remembered. Though scars remain, the eternal flame is rekindled as a symbol not of vengeance but of resilience. Epilogue. Time passes. Helena's memories settle into a mosaic she can look at without crumbling. The eternal flame's literal and symbolic meanings evolve, and Palladia begins, haltingly, to build institutions that resist the centralized cruelty of necromantic rule. Helena keeps her hands in healing. She keeps her fury too, a reminder that even when the worst is resisted, the scars remain and require tending.